After years of infidelity, husband confesses affair to his wife and demands, "She's ill and you must cover all her medical expenses." Emily had always been a determined woman, someone who knew from a young age that her independence and financial stability were priorities. She worked tirelessly to achieve this goal, and with effort, she became the owner of one of the most prestigious clothing stores in the city. Her success was the result of years of dedication, sacrifices, and tough choices which granted her enviable comfort. However, this constant pursuit made her sacrifice important parts of her personal life without realizing the impact this had on her marriage. Her relationship with Kevin, a dedicated nurse, began with camaraderie and love, but over time, it grew increasingly distant. Routine and exhaustion took up the space that was once filled with conversations and affection. Emily was never negligent, but work consumed her attention, and she didn't notice that the bond with Kevin was weakening. To her, the marriage was still strong, because there were no arguments or betrayals, just an absence of time that seemed inevitable. What she didn't realize was that silence and the lack of connection were slowly dissolving what had once been a strong, meaningful relationship. Kevin, although understanding of her dedication, increasingly felt alone. He tried to stay present, to create moments to reconnect with his wife, but Emily, immersed in her responsibilities, didn't see the urgency in these attempts. Conversations became brief, gestures of affection grew rare, and the relationship turned into a mechanical coexistence, lacking the intensity it once had. He wanted to regain what they had built, but he realized that Emily had become distant, not realizing that the marriage was slowly unraveling. As the days passed, the distance between Emily and Kevin seemed even greater, but she didn't notice that something different was happening. Then, one day, while they were both at home, something rare happened. Emily noticed her husband's restlessness. Kevin couldn't stay still, walking back and forth, his hands trembling slightly, and his eyes avoiding hers. "What's wrong, Kevin? You're acting strange," Emily said, frowning as she observed him. "You've been restless since you got here. Did something happen?" He stopped for a moment, sighed, and ran his hands over his face, as if trying to organize his thoughts before responding. "It's nothing, Emily. Just work problems," Kevin said, without looking directly at her. "Nothing you need to worry about." Emily narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "Are you sure? Because you look nervous. Is this about me?" Kevin quickly shook his head, but avoided her gaze. She sighed, tired. "All right, Kevin. If you don't want to talk, I won't insist." With a heavy sigh, she turned her attention back to the papers on the table, leaving the subject aside. She didn't notice that Kevin's gaze lingered on her from a distance, heavy, filled with something she couldn't yet define. Time passed, and Kevin remained restless. Emily, immersed in her routine, didn't give it much importance until, a few hours later, he approached her differently. His expression wasn't just worried, but tense, anguished, as if he were about to do something that would change everything. "Emily, I need you to come with me. I need to take you somewhere," Kevin said, his voice filled with hesitation but also with a decision that had already been made. She looked up, confused. "What? Where? What's going on, Kevin?" He took a deep breath and looked away for a moment. "It's something important. I want you to meet someone." The discomfort inside her grew. Kevin had never spoken this way. "What's this about? Who do I need to meet?" He hesitated but finally said, "We need to go to the hospital." A chill ran down Emily's spine. "Hospital? Are you sick? Did something happen to someone in your family?" Kevin quickly shook his head. "No. It's nothing like that. Just, please trust me and come with me." She crossed her arms, suspicious. "Kevin, I'm tired. I've had a full day. If this isn't urgent, can it wait until tomorrow?" He closed his eyes for a second, as if trying to gather strength. "It can't wait. Emily, I'm begging you, just come with me. After this, you can do whatever you want, but I need you to come with me now." The desperation in his voice disarmed her. Emily took a deep breath, reluctantly grabbed her keys. "All right, but I hope this is worth my time." The drive to the hospital was silent. Emily stared out the window, not understanding what awaited her. Kevin held the steering wheel firmly, his expression stiff, tense. When they arrived, he led her directly to a more private wing. The hospital was quiet at that hour, making the atmosphere even stranger. He told a nurse he didn't want to be disturbed and continued down the corridor with Emily by his side. "Kevin, tell me what's going on," Emily said, her patience starting to wear thin. He stopped in front of a door. "You'll understand now." He pushed open the door, and as soon as Emily entered the room, her body froze. There, lying on the hospital bed, was an unconscious woman. Her pale face, fragile expression, and thin hair showed the effects of the illness. Emily felt a wave of discomfort and looked to Kevin for answers. The silence inside the room was suffocating. Kevin lowered his head, his eyes fixed on the floor as if searching for courage to speak. Emily felt a tightening in her chest. There was something wrong, something far greater than she imagined. "Who is this woman, Kevin?" Emily said, her voice firm but laced with growing tension. "Why did you bring me here?" Kevin swallowed hard, his breath shaky. He lifted his eyes just for a moment, and Emily saw something in them she didn't recognize. Guilt, fear, regret. Her heart pounded against her chest, the anxiety growing with each passing second of silence. "I need you to listen to me all the way through, Emily," he said, his voice faltering slightly. Emily crossed her arms, her patience at its limit. "Then speak. What's going on? Who is this woman?" Kevin opened his mouth a few times, but no words came out. He ran his hand through his hair, visibly nervous, breathing deeply as if trying to prepare for a fatal blow. Finally, he gathered the courage to look Emily in the eye. "Emily, our marriage changed. You know this. The routine, the exhaustion, time passed and we drifted apart. I felt alone, lost, and then I met Cynthia." Emily furrowed her brow, her eyes alternating between him and the unconscious woman on the bed. A knot formed in her throat. "Cynthia? Who is Cynthia, Kevin? Are you telling me that this woman here, this sick woman, is her? What are you trying to tell me?" Kevin looked away, the weight of shame etched on his face. He inhaled deeply, as if gathering strength to deliver the final blow. "She works here at the hospital. At first it was just a friendship. We talked. She listened to me. She understood me. And I crossed a line I should never have crossed." Emily blinked a few times as if trying to process those words. A cold wave surged through her spine and her breathing became irregular. "Are you telling me that you cheated on me, Kevin? That you had an affair with this woman?" Kevin closed his eyes, his voice choked when he finally confessed, "Yes, I cheated on you." Yet the impact of those words hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. The air left her lungs, her legs weakened, and for a moment she thought she might faint. Her eyes fixed on Cynthia, unconscious, unaware of the storm that was destroying her life. The hospital seemed to spin around her, and the sound of her own breathing became deafening. "This has to be a joke. A very bad joke. You brought me here to humiliate me, to rub your betrayal in my face." She finally exploded, her body trembling with rage. No, it's not like that." Kevin raised his hands, desperate. "I never wanted you to find out this way. I never wanted this to happen. I got lost, Emily. I let myself go. But now, everything is out of my control." She let out a bitter, almost hysterical laugh, her indignation spilling over. "Out of control? Is that all you have to say to me? You want me to feel sorry for you, to understand you? You destroyed everything, Kevin. You broke the only thing I thought was solid. How could you do this to me? How did you have the nerve to betray me, to lie to me, to deceive me? And now you have the audacity to bring me here. Why? What do you still want from me? Kevin hesitated, his hands trembling, and Emily realized he hadn't told her everything. She felt her stomach twist again. What else, Kevin? What else are you hiding? She spat the words out, her voice full of fury. He swallowed hard, looking away. She didn't know I was married, Emily. I never told her. And now, she's sick, very sick. Emily's shock turned into disbelief. And I have something to do with that? You want me to feel sorry for her? You want me to sympathize because she was as deceived as I was? Kevin closed his eyes for a moment before letting out the words that would change everything. She doesn't have the money for treatment. I need you to help her financially. The silence was deafening. Emily felt the ground slip from under her feet. She blinked several times, trying to process what she had just heard. Then she let out a humorless laugh, her whole body trembling with disbelief and disgust. You've gone mad. You must be joking. You cheat on me, deceive this woman, destroy our marriage, and now you're asking me for money to save her life? I know I don't have the right. I know I'm the one to blame. Kevin fell to his knees before her, his eyes filled with desperation. But Cynthia isn't to blame. She was deceived by me just like you. She trusted me, believed in me, and now she's between life and death. Please, Emily, don't let her die because of my mistakes. Emily felt her throat dry. Her eyes moved from Kevin to Cynthia, then back to Kevin. She wanted to scream, to punch him, to hurt him the way he had hurt her. But all she could do was let out a heavy sigh, filled with pain. Do you really expect me to carry the weight of your betrayal, Kevin? To pay for the treatment of the woman who destroyed our marriage? Tears streamed down Kevin's face. You can hate me. You can erase me from your life. But don't let her pay for what I did. Don't let my mistake condemn her. Emily looked at him, her mind spinning in utter chaos. She felt rage, humiliation, disbelief. Everything inside her screamed to say a firm no and walk away from there. But at the same time, there was an innocent woman in that bed, a woman who had also been deceived just like her. Unable to bear the situation any longer, Emily pulled her hands away and stepped back. I need time to think. I don't want to look at you right now. I don't want to look at any of this. She turned and left the room, her body trembling, her mind spinning uncontrollably. Kevin stayed behind, kneeling, watching the only thing he had left walk away. Cynthia remained there, motionless, unconscious, unaware that her life depended on the decision of a betrayed woman. Emily left the hospital with hurried steps, feeling the crushing weight of betrayal in every muscle of her body. The air seemed colder, heavier, but not as much as the pain settling inside her. Her hands trembled as she opened the car door, and as soon as she sat in the driver's seat, she let out a long, shaky sigh. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Not there, not in that moment. She started the car and drove aimlessly, letting the empty streets take her far away from that hospital, far away from Kevin, far away from that absurd reality she had just faced. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. The silence inside the car was suffocating, and her mind was spinning out of control. Kevin's words echoed like hammer blows in her head. I cheated on you. She didn't know I was married. I need you to help. Each phrase hit her again, as if she were reliving the moment over and over. Anger pulsed through her veins. Disappointment burned inside her. How could he? How dare he ask that of her? She wasn't responsible for his mistakes. It wasn't her duty to fix the mess he had created. Emily gripped the steering wheel tightly. I will never help this woman, she thought, determined. It was the least she could do to preserve a shred of dignity after everything that had happened. Kevin destroyed her, deceived her, disrespected her, and now he expected her to extend a hand to the woman he chose over her? It was absurd, an insult. She continued driving aimlessly, passing familiar streets without truly seeing them. The city lights seemed blurry in her vision, her thoughts overlapping, making it impossible to think clearly. Then, without realizing it, she stopped in a nearly deserted avenue and rested her head on the seat. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, as if the air were trapped inside her. She closed her eyes and tried to calm down. She felt empty and yet overflowing with emotions she didn't know how to control. But as the minutes passed, something began to shift inside her. She thought about Cynthia. She thought about the pale, fragile woman in the hospital bed. The woman who had also been deceived, who had believed in Kevin, who had given herself to a man who never told her the truth. Emily slowly opened her eyes, fixing her gaze on the dark street in front of her. She was also a victim, she murmured to herself, with a bitter taste in her mouth. She didn't want to admit it, but it was true. Cynthia was between life and death, unaware that her love had been a lie. The hatred Emily felt for Kevin couldn't be directed at Cynthia. It wasn't fair. She had always prided herself on being a strong woman, on making decisions based on principles, not on impulses of revenge. That was what set her apart from so many others. And now, in the face of this brutal situation, she needed to decide what kind of person she wanted to be. She knew what she had to do. The next morning, Emily woke up early. She hadn't slept well, but the decision she had made the night before had cleared her mind. The weight of disappointment was still there, firmly in her chest, but now she also carried a cold determination. She grabbed her phone and typed a short message to Kevin. "Come to my office, we need to talk." She sat at her desk, waiting. The minutes passed slowly, but she didn't move. She just waited, as if about to close a chapter of her life that should have never existed. When she heard the knock, she didn't hesitate. She stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. Kevin was there with a defeated look, hesitant. His face reflected the weight of the last few hours. He looked exhausted, his eyes red, dark circles deep. "Come in," Emily said with no emotion. He obeyed, walking slowly to the chair in front of her. He sat down, his hands restless, and took a deep breath before speaking. "Emily, She raised her hand, interrupting him. "I'm not interested in apologies or justifications, Kevin. I thought a lot last night. I reviewed everything that happened, and my decision is made. I want a divorce." Silence filled the room. The air felt thicker, laden with suffocating tension. Kevin's eyes widened, as if he wasn't prepared to hear that, even though he knew it was inevitable. "Emily, please, don't make this decision in the heat of the moment." She let out a dry laugh. "In the heat of the moment. Kevin, you destroyed our marriage. You cheated on me, lied, deceived two women at the same time. Do you think this decision was impulsive? I spent the whole night reliving every detail of this tragedy you caused. And now I have clarity. There's nothing left here to save." Kevin lowered his head, defeated. His breathing was heavy, and his presence in the room seemed smaller, as if shrinking under the weight of his own guilt. "If this is your decision, I accept it," he murmured, his voice almost breaking. Emily took a deep breath and adjusted the papers on her desk, as if organizing her own thoughts. "I also decided that I'll pay for Cynthia's treatment." Kevin's eyes widened, confused. "What? Are you serious?" "Yes, but not because of you," Emily said firmly. "Not because you asked or because I want to make your life easier. Cynthia was deceived just like I was. She doesn't deserve to pay with her life for something that wasn't her fault." Kevin quickly nodded, as if that answer was a relief amid the storm. "Emily, I don't even know what to say. Thank you. But Emily didn't finish. However, there's a condition, and it's not negotiable. He tensed. Anything, whatever you want. She kept her gaze fixed on him, each word heavy with resolve. You will tell Cynthia everything. You will tell her that you lied to her, that you deceived her, that you never told her you were married. But you will do that when she's stable enough to hear it. I won't allow that news to harm her health any further. She deserves to know the truth, but at the right time. Kevin closed his eyes for a moment and let out a heavy sigh. I'll do it. You're right. She has the right to know, and I'll tell her when it's safe for her, when she's strong enough to handle it. Emily nodded. Good. Now leave my house. I want all our issues resolved as quickly as possible. After that, I never want to see you again. Kevin hesitated, his eyes pleading as if he wanted to say more, but he realized there was nothing left to say. He slowly stood up, gave one last look at Emily, and in a barely audible tone murmured, I'm sorry, and thank you. Without saying anything else, he turned and left, closing the door behind him. Emily stood there for a few seconds, feeling the weight of that moment. But instead of breaking down, she took a deep breath and lifted her head. That day, the chapter of her marriage ended forever. In the following weeks, Emily kept her promise. With her financial help, Cynthia received the necessary treatment. Kevin stayed by Cynthia's side the entire time, but kept enough distance to not interfere with her recovery. Emily, for her part, continued with her life, keeping herself informed only as much as necessary about Cynthia's condition. It wasn't for Kevin, it wasn't out of pity, but because she knew the other woman didn't deserve to suffer even more. Each day, Cynthia showed signs of improvement. Her body, once fragile and vulnerable, began to respond well to the treatment. The doctors were optimistic. Time, which once seemed like an enemy, now worked in her favor. After weeks of struggle, Cynthia was finally strong enough to hear the truth. The moment Emily had been waiting for had arrived. That afternoon, Kevin contacted her. His voice on the other end of the line was hesitant. Emily, I think it's time. She closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath. All right. I'll be there in an hour. Besides, when she arrived at the hospital, Emily felt a tightness in her chest. The last time she had been there, her life had collapsed. Now she was returning not as a victim, but as someone who would close that chapter once and for all. Kevin was waiting outside Cynthia's room. He looked worn, the weight of what was about to happen reflected in every line of his face. She's awake. Stronger. The doctor said she can receive visitors without a problem, Kevin said, his voice laden with tension. Emily crossed her arms. Then let's finish this. Kevin slowly opened the door. Cynthia was sitting on the bed looking out the window, distracted. Her face still showed signs of illness, but there was color in her cheeks, and her eyes, once so dull, seemed to have regained some of their sparkle. When she heard the door open, she smiled upon seeing Kevin, but her gaze became curious and slightly confused when she noticed Emily right behind him. Kevin, who is she? Cynthia asked, furrowing her brow slightly. Kevin hesitated for a moment. This is Emily. We need to talk, Cynthia. There's something important you need to know. Cynthia blinked, trying to understand. Talk? About what? Kevin, what's going on? She then looked back at Emily, her mind searching for a logical explanation. Are you a doctor? One of the people who helped with my treatment? She asked with a hesitant smile. Emily remained serious. No, Cynthia. I'm not a doctor, but yes, I helped with your treatment. Cynthia's expression briefly brightened. Kevin, you never told me someone helped me. I thought it was you who got everything, she said, looking at him with a mixture of confusion and expectation. Kevin lowered his head, avoiding her gaze. I should have told you earlier, but I didn't know how. The truth is, Emily paid for your treatment. Cynthia looked from one to the other, clearly trying to piece things together. But why? Why would she do that? We don't even know each other. Emily sighed, keeping her gaze firm. Because I owed a debt to the truth. And because, above all, you didn't deserve to suffer for something that wasn't your fault. Cynthia furrowed her brow, still not understanding. I don't get it. Debt to the truth? Kevin, what's going on? Kevin took a deep breath, finally gathering the courage to speak. Cynthia, I lied to you. From the beginning. I never told you the whole truth about me. The smile faded from Cynthia's lips. She looked directly at him, feeling something unsettling in her chest. What do you mean by that? Emily then spoke directly, without hesitation. Kevin never told you he was married. The impact of those words hit Cynthia hard. Her eyes widened, and she shook her head as if refusing to believe it. No, no way. Kevin, that can't be true, can it? Kevin closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded slowly. It's true, Cynthia. I was married. Emily was my wife. And I never told you that. Cynthia's world seemed to collapse. Her breathing became shallow, and a feeling of nausea washed over her. No, you love me, Kevin. You said you loved me, and all this time, you were married. Kevin lowered his head. I loved you, Cynthia, but I loved you the wrong way. I lied, and nothing can justify that. Cynthia felt her stomach twist. It was all a lie. All this time, I was just the other woman. The words came out as a bitter whisper. Emily intervened, her voice firm but without malice. You didn't know, Cynthia. You trusted a man who lied to both of us. You were deceived too. Cynthia put her hands to her face, trembling. I thought he was my world. I trusted him. And now all I have left is a life built on a lie. Emily stepped closer, remaining calm. You don't have to carry that weight. I know it seems impossible now, but you will overcome this. You will rebuild your life. Cynthia looked at Emily, her tears still falling. And you? How do you stay so strong? I don't know what I would do in your place. Emily gave a bitter smile. I learned that pain can't define me. What Kevin did was unforgivable, but I won't let it destroy me. I'm more than a woman betrayed, Cynthia, and you're more than a woman deceived. Cynthia wiped her tears, breathing deeply. She looked at Kevin, her gaze now filled with a painful firmness. I never want to see you again, Kevin. Never. You destroyed me, you lied to me, and I can never trust you again. Kevin nodded slowly, his expression empty. I understand. You have every right. Cynthia turned to Emily. Thank you for everything, for the treatment, for being here, for telling me the truth. Her voice faltered slightly. And I'm sorry for getting involved with him, even though I didn't know. Emily took her hands. You don't have to apologize. We were both victims, and now we both move forward. Cynthia smiled weakly but sincerely, and in that moment, the solidarity between two wounded women was stronger than any resentment. Time passed, and each of them followed a different path. Emily rebuilt herself, returning to her work and finding a peace she thought was lost. Cynthia, with her health restored, decided to start a new life, far from any traces of that painful past. And Kevin was left alone. He saved the woman he loved, but at the cost of losing everything. Regret became his only companion, and the awareness of his mistakes would haunt him for the rest of his life. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.